Welcome to the Wealth Steading Podcast. This is episode 511. Today is February 20th, 2026. I'm your host, John Pugliano. I'm also the founder and money manager at investablewealth.com. Well, hey, I know some people have been asking, where are the episodes? You've been silent the last couple weeks. Well, bottom line, more than anything, I've been holding off waiting for this Supreme Court decision on tariffs. I'm going to briefly talk and give you an update on that in this episode, but really the main focus is on the AI apocalypse. That's what the media narrative has dubbed it. And my intent today is to point out that despite themselves, the media narrative is actually spot on, but not in the way they've intended it. We'll get to all that in a minute. As far as Supreme Court's decision on tariffs, this is nothing that wasn't expected. If you look at the large investor sentiment survey, and I'm talking not individual investors, but the big smart money on Wall Street, over 78% of them expected today's outcome. Paradoxically, the reason I've been waiting to do an episode and why I've been watching the volume and price action of the stock market so closely, especially during the shortened week with President's Day, is because I was concerned that maybe we'd see a, buy the rumor, sell the news event, where when the, quote, good news came out that tariffs were being ruled illegal, that since so many people already expected that to happen anyways, there may be a sell-off rather than a bounce. Either way, I didn't take any precautions against it. In fact, clients that have been bringing in new money for the most part, I've been reinvesting it in the core portfolio, which, as you know, is based not on tariffs, but in the major shift in national security policy, but it's moving away from peak globalization. And the ruling from the Supreme Court didn't do anything to distract that or eliminate that. In fact, what they struck down was the orange tariff man's erratic implication of tariffs, but not the legality of tariffs, nor even, if you read the way the decisions were written, the importance of using the right procedures to continue with tariffs and other industrial policies. We'll talk more about that maybe in the next episode. We'll see what kind of feedback I receive from listeners and if anybody wants to take a deeper dive into that subject. But the bottom line is, what was really reinforced here is the legality and the incentive to go forward with sections 232 and section 301, which cover national security and unfair trade practices, which can both be and will be used with targeted tariffs. As a side note, and this is what I really want to talk about in a future episode when we talk about this Supreme Court decision, this is less about tariffs and more about restraining regulation, and specifically regulation that comes from the executive branch of the government. And you combine today's decision with the ruling last year about the overturning of the Chevron ruling, and you combine these two, and I think the path forward is for less, not more, regulation. And that plays into the long-term overall trend of not sacrificing the U.S. economy for global stability. I digress. More about that in future episodes. Main topic of today's episode. I want to comment on the AI apocalypse. That's been the media narrative for quite a while now. It's really gotten strong over the last 3 weeks or so. And in what I think is a humorous turn of events here, I'm actually going to acknowledge that the media narrative is correct. We are in an AI apocalypse. But despite themselves, this AI apocalypse has nothing to do with their intended message and their never-ending gloom and doom. We'll end on that note today. But let's look at the overall failings and the inaccuracy of the AI apocalypse gloom and doom and that the media is perpetuating right now. And this, I guess, if I remember back to my days of studying logic and reasoning, I think this term is called antimony. It's beyond a paradox. It's a cognitive disconnect from when you have two or more theories or principles that seem perfectly logical on their own, but they're either diametrically opposed to each other or, they're mutually exclusive. So that if one turns out to be right, then the other has to be wrong. And this is even though on their own they stand up as brilliant arguments. But obviously at least one, if not both of them, could end up not being true. Now the big argument on the AI apocalypse started pretty much with, the fear about circular investing and the hyperscalers, the big semiconductor companies like NVIDIA. Their growth couldn't go on forever. It wasn't sustainable. These hyperscalers are burning and draining their cash reserves to invest in something that's never going to pay any profits or dividends. Okay, so let's assume that's true. Well, what are all these other arguments? And really the big emphasis now on the AI apocalypse isn't on the overspending of AI companies, but it's on the destruction of the software industry, right? Software as a service. You've seen major declines in the stocks of everything from Intuit to Salesforce to Adobe. And this is an industry that's been hugely profitable for the last, at least 25 years. But overnight, they're going to suddenly be destroyed by AI disruption. Well, again, is that true? If there really is all this circular investing, and the hyperscalers and the companies like NVIDIA are just throwing good money away at bad, scaling up with all this AI that's never going to pan out, then if that's true, then how can it really be disrupting the software industry? Right, they can't both be true at the same time. Either the hyperscalers and the implementers of AI are going to prevail and the software as a service guys are going to lose, or the software as a service guys are not going to be impacted and the, Metas of the world, the Facebook, they're going to lose money on AI investments just like they did on the metaverse. Kind of funny too, isn't it, that Zuckerberg was so insistent about changing the name of the company to Meta when AI is what's winning out in the long run. Anyways. And the truth of the matter is that it's probably somewhere in the middle. Yeah, maybe a lot of the hyperscalers are overspending. And yeah, NVIDIA won't grow at 30% forever. Things will taper off. Markets adjust. People adapt. And as far as the software companies, those that are better able to implement AI into their products and services, well, they'll thrive and the other people will go bankrupt. Think back, 40 years ago, maybe 35. Kodak used to be the king of photography. That industry, along with printing and publishing and the paper industry and anything having to do with analog data, it's been anywhere from not only disrupted to, in most cases, destroyed over the last 30 years. This is a point I made in my book, The Robots Are Coming, that I wrote about a decade ago, where I talked about how digitization of data ultimately meant that data has become free. My premise is that automation and robotics will do the similar thing for a lot of labor and human effort. Now, it won't be totally free. It won't be as revolutionary as what we saw in terms of lowering the cost of data, because data can be achieved by simply moving around electrons. Human effort is much harder to replace, and that's whether we're talking about knowledge work or physical manual labor. This is one of the reasons that, again, as I pointed this out in my book, that the people that are going to be most hurt in the labor market because of artificial intelligence and robotics aren't going to be the manual labor guys. Those simple jobs have already been replaced 30 years ago. In fact, it's the people that are in skilled trades, whether you're a surgeon or whether you're a carpenter, if you're good with working with your hands and your brain, you're going to thrive. The people that are going to be most hurt are the bureaucrats, the mid-level managers, the people that add very little and, in fact, mostly create red tape and create friction throughout the economy. Those are the people that are going to be most impacted by artificial intelligence and robotics. Now, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go back to the AI Armageddon, and especially in recent weeks. Oh my goodness, the disruption has moved beyond destroying just software as a service companies. And it's really the disruption of everything. No industry is safe. Wealth management companies, logistics companies, consulting companies, they're all going to go out of business. Everything's going to be replaced by an AI agent. Well, listen, I'm not worried about my job getting replaced anytime soon. And again, case in point, if you used artificial intelligence in the last week or two, you've been bombarded with all the negativity of how either the Supreme Court ruling on tariffs or, this AI apocalypse or war in Iran. I mean, how all these things are just going to be devastating for the stock market and the economy. And if you traded on that negative news, even in this light volume week that we've seen with President's Day holiday, then you've been on the short end of the deal in terms of trading not only just this week, but again, I think you're missing the longer term trend. You have to remember that artificial intelligence is just trained on available data, available information. Think about, and this relates specifically to stock prediction in the stock market, these models are focused and are trained on news and information. Well, who puts out the news and information as it relates to the stock market? It's Wall Street, right? Most of the data that AI models are trained on is marketing information. And I say Wall Street, listen, it's no different if you're a crypto investor. I'm going to hurt people's feelings here, but go look at the major news sources for crypto, right? Whether you're talking crap coins or Bitcoin, none of it is non-biased. And in fact, it's all published and put out by the fat cats of whatever industry is being covered by that particular media or news source, right? It doesn't matter if you're talking about the steel industry, the crypto industry, the medical industry. The media is all controlled by those industrial complexes that are reporting on that sector of the economy. My point here is that AI will advance and make things better in areas just like automation will, where you have repetitive and routine tasks, things that are predictable, things that can be reduced to an algorithm. Predicting the future is not something that an algorithm can do. And so when AI is applied to things that it can't possibly know or achieve, then it'll fail. But when it's used to increase productivity by sifting through a bunch of data or by cutting through red tape bureaucracy, then yes, it'll work in those instances. Just like a robotic welder is incredibly efficient when applied inside of an automobile manufacturing facility, that same robot isn't going to work very well in random repair jobs that occur out in the middle of your ranch or out on a drilling rig somewhere in West Texas. For the time being and well into the future, it's going to be much more effective to send a human welder out to replace or repair a broken pipeline. Those skills and abilities are not going to be replaced by robotics. That's the way you can look at artificial intelligence in general. It's going to have applications, but not everywhere. The bottom line on technology, and this is such a simple concept, but the Luddites can never understand or absorb it. Technology, whether you're talking about the invention of electricity or nuclear energy or large language models or whatever, technology reduces variable cost. Think about how digital technology has drastically changed the printing and publishing business. Again, over these last 30, 40 years. And the variable cost that goes into publishing data, whether it's a PDF file or whether it's a Kindle book, the variable cost has been taken down to almost zero because the only cost is really in the creation of the content, the distribution, the printing, the publishing, the paper, the ink, the chemicals, the forests, the lumberjacks, all the things required to print physical books and newspapers and phone books and all the other things, magazines that used to be solely published in an analog fashion, those industries have all been disrupted and in many cases totally destroyed. But content creation has never been greater. And just like digitization of data hurt some companies, overall, it's been the best thing that could have happened to the economy. Digitization and electrification and automation and robotics are all going to have the same future on the overall economy going forward. So while the media narrative is negative and it talks about conflicting, mutually exclusive arguments about whether AI is either in a bubble or whether it's going to destroy and disrupt, human life as we know it, the bottom line, the other side of that argument, is that overall reduction in variable cost is going to be highly beneficial to the overall economy. And to the extent that software companies lose out, well, that just means a gain for all those companies over the last 25 years that have been buying services from software companies. And there's a whole lot more of those people and companies than there are software companies. So, you know what? We are in an AI apocalypse, but not in the way the media is trying to scare you. It's all good news. What's the real definition of apocalypse? For some reason, our society thinks that apocalypse is end times and disasters, Armageddon. No, that's not the meaning of the word apocalypse. The meaning of apocalypse is a revelation. It's the uncovering of human truth. It's the moment the curtain drops and you can see the future clearly. And that's what we're in. We're in an AI apocalypse because you can look forward and see a future that is bright and prosperous for people that are willing and able to take this new technology and create better products and services with it. Listen, as I've been saying for a long time, and this time is no different, we live in the most prosperous period of human history, and it's up to you to go out and create your own future. So go take advantage of it.